Hi, everybody. Matt Lawton here. This is the Astrological Winds channel. I'm going to take a look at the astrological weather report for the week of March 30th through April 5th. If you missed last week's blog, that's when I did the first look for April with the outer planets. So you want to go back to that blog and check that out if you're looking for the April report in a bigger way. Anyway, a little bit of this first. Just so you know, this week we're going to feature the full moon in Libra. And we also have Venus changing signs going into Taurus, a couple other things I'm going to talk about too. But yeah, just a little information first. The Astrological Winds channel is a free video blog that's been on YouTube as a channel now for 6+ years. If you have a YouTube account, and you like what you're seeing, become a follower, please. And when you become a follower, don't forget to turn your notifications on, or you're going to miss the blog. You just, it's like, you have the follower thing, but they don't let you know that it's coming up. So remember to do that little thing. And remember, it's available on podcast too. It was a podcast before it was a channel, and the same exact audio version of this video you can listen to on a podcast. Just go to your podcast app, look up Astrological Winds channel, and there's a number of different ones that carry it. Actually, Buzzsprout distributes it. And that frees you up, to listen to it at times. I know we got a busy life these days, all of us. So, maybe when you're driving to work or whatever, taking a bike ride or whatever, you get a chance to, listen to it without having to be married to the video. Also, it has its own Astrological Winds channel has its own Instagram page. So that's another way you can be sure that you're reminded it comes up. It'll show up in your newsreel every Monday if you become a follower. And then the one place you can always find it, and past blogs too, like last week's that has the monthly, is on my website, www.astrologicalwinds.com, not channel, just wins. And that also has my menu for my professional services. I've been a professional astrologer for 24 years now, doing charts, and I would love to do yours or somebody else. I have a lot of different chart services. So check that out there. And just so right here at the beginning, we're starting a beginner student class probably within the next month. So I'd really like to see if there's anyone else who's been kind of sitting on that fence ready to go. Only $25 per class, although yes, you are going to have to pay for the semester ahead of time. I need to have that commitment from people to do that. So, all right. Want to get into these, and I'll get into more details on that stuff, but get into the weekly stuff. And once again, I've been having a lot of fun going back, and I do this most of the time on the blog. Sometimes I don't when I have a real lot of stuff to go through. But once again, I think I got a little bit of extra time here this week where I can, once again, let's just look how astrology is working. We had this Mercury retrograde for the last few weeks, right? And once again, I'm going to use our president in the United States as a great example of Mercury retrograde energy. I mean, he just really does a good job of like just being at the whims of the astrological energy, which is why I do the blog, so that you're not so much at the whims at it, that you can work with it. So, Mercury retrograde, I'd say, don't make decisions, don't start new things. We all know they're going to go off trail. They're not going to go on the tracks you want, and you're going to make mistakes. And then Mercury, with that backwards motion, is going to make you have to backtrack to get out of whatever mistakes or sticky situations that you've gotten into. And he already has, what was that one nickname they came up with him? Taco. That was it. Taco, right? Trump always chickens out. That was it. Trump always chickens out. So like you can see, like he made a bunch of decisions during this Mercury retrograde where he's really backtracking now, and one of them was he wasn't going to sign any more bills until they passed the Save America Act. Well, during this Mercury retrograde, the TSA situation got so bad that we had lines at airports that were 3 or 4 hours long, people missing flights. So such a Mercury retrograde thing. And so now he's saying to Congress, hey, get me that bill to, get that passed. So, all of a sudden that promise of not passing any other bills until the Save America Act is passed is, whoops, made a mistake there. I guess that's not going to work. Then he starts a war in Iran during it. Well, how's that been going? Right? It's so bad right now that he's trying to negotiate a way out of it. He's trying to back out of something that he started that he should have never started in the first place, at least not under the auspices of what he started it under, because it just wasn't true, which was part of the Mercury retrograde in Pisces of causing confusion by not being precise with our words, by not being truthful, by being deceptive with our words. And so now he's really got himself in a sticky situation again where it's really hurting the whole world's economy. And now he's trying to negotiate himself out of that. And what's the other party saying? Well, we don't want to negotiate right now. And then he fired Gnome was her name, right? The security chief there. And, fought and fought and fought that, he wasn't going to give up these ICE urban crawls, that he was not going to give up these administrative warrants. And whether you guys know it or not, he gave up those things the last week or two. They've been negotiating on that new DHS Act, and he has decided that administrative warrants are not going to be okay anymore, and that these ICE crawls through large urban areas are no longer going to be anymore. So you see a lot of decisions he's going, basically poor decisions that are coming back to haunt him now and making him eat his own words or copying a mea culpa here. And then just look at the way that Mercury retrograde affected the travel over those 3 weeks, too. We had 2 giant winter storms at the beginning of it that messed everybody up. We had the Iranian war start. We have the government slow down from the TSA, and we've had collisions right on airport runways, all during Mercury retrograde. So any of you people who don't think Mercury retrograde brings up the amount of travel snafus and things like that, I'm sorry, I've been seeing it over and over, and it probably means you have Mercury retrograde in your chart, and it just doesn't affect you as much as anyone else. But even the stuff like customers complaining about the airlines now having less and less flights, packing flights, less seats, charging more and more, a lot of Mercury retrograde, Pisces type stuff. And then last week, if you saw the blog or even the annual blog, I talked about Uranus going into Gemini, which it did a little bit last year, went back into Taurus, and now is going this month on it. Well, next month, April 25th, it's going to go into Taurus for good for 7 years. And once again, what was my main point was that Uranus and Gemini were going to see some incredible technological advances, but they're not factoring in their effects on everything else. Like they're amazing creative intellectual ideas, but they're not factoring the effects on people's emotions, on the environment, on things like that. Well, this week, what's one of the big stories of this week is that OpenAI, which started as a nonprofit, right, that was going to use AI to benefit all of humanity. Everybody was going to get the benefit of this, and it was a nonprofit when it started, and then as these years have gone by, the last 10 years, it slowly has become more and more of an for-profit company, and more having more and more impact in the world, to the point where even Elon Musk is trying to get them, through a lawsuit, of course, to get back on course to what they did. Well, just this week, they announced that they are going to try to go back more toward their nonprofit status, towards AI benefiting all humanity. And part of the reason why was that they started to really cop to their mea culpa, right? Mercury retrograde again gets us to see things that, yes, AI is doing very negative impacts on people's lives. It's taking people's jobs away. It's hurting the economy, and it's creating a mental health crisis even. So they're turning it back now, and so like, and part of what's been going on is that the realization that the energy it takes is very environmentally taxing, and it's hurting people, and that these these chat bots that they have on these AI rooms are hurting people with their mental health, and that even AI that's being developed is being taken by governments and being used for weaponry in war. In fact, that was another big story that came out this week, was that Anthropic is suing the Trump administration for using their technology without permission for military purposes. So this really is just the tip of the iceberg of what we're going to see for 7 years. A lot of these moral kind of issues that come up from such an intellectually driven technologies that are not taking into account the effects on people's lives emotionally and physically, and and what are even, like, the true facts. Do we even know? There's probably, we know that there one fact is there's a great new technology, but is that other fact going to come true? Is it really going to help everybody, or is it going to continue to hurt most people? So, very interesting energy again, just in the last week or so on the newsreels, that are very fitting to the Mercury retrograde and the oncoming Uranus in Gemini. Okay, so let's get into this week now. So, big change is on Monday when Venus gets out of Aries, a sign of its detriment, and goes into Taurus, a sign that it actually rules. And Venus actually rules two signs. It rules Libra also. This is the side of Venus, the Taurus side, where we enjoy the pleasures of life. Venus is one of the beneficial planets, and it brings us a lot of material joy and pleasure, right? While we're in our earthly existence. So when the goddess is in Taurus, this is when she really enjoys earthly pleasures the most. And so it really, people can be very kind towards one another, very warm, friendly energy, but it definitely centers more around our loved ones in Taurus, people that we've developed a strong relationship with. And in fact, with Venus and Taurus, we're so dedicated to our family and friends and loved ones that we look right through their faults. Like, we're aware of them, but we just look right through them. We're just so dedicated to them, and really to the point of almost like Cancer, where we can get possessive of them. We have to be a little bit careful, but we definitely love our things too. Whatever our creature comforts are, we could be a billionaire, or we could be like living, in a trailer park. But we all have creature comforts, right? We all have things that are objects or assets or things that we love. And this is a time where we really enjoy those things, where we can luxuriate ourselves in those things, where we can get really, really uncomfortable and enjoy the pleasures of life in the way we like to do that, to the point where with Taurus, we can be very overindulgent. Actually, Taurus has a very passive physical energy. It likes to lay around on the couch and eat bonbons and watch movies. So it's like, and it likes to buy things that are comfortable to us. Taurus definitely wants to make sure that its loved ones have all the things it needs, but it also likes to, like, you know, go beyond that and give ourselves and loved ones pleasurable things too, and really be able to take each other out. But definitely one where we're really willing to help each other out. Taurus, we definitely see through the faults of others and are willing to help them out. Also a time where we do manage our money well. Taurus is all about money, and so is Venus. And this is a time where it's a good time for this to happen, actually, because we probably all really need to do that right now. While the way the economy has been moving in the last, for quite a while now. I mean, it's been worse the last month, but it's really been going on for quite a while. And so, like, needing to be like, manage our money is really good. But it's a time where we can really be smart about our investments too. And then Wednesday's the big day. That's the full moon up here on the board. full moon at 13 degrees Libra, so it's opposite the sun at 13 degrees Aries. And this one is coming off in opposition to Saturn. Also, it's separating from an opposition to Saturn, and it is actually applying to a square to Jupiter in Cancer, still strong in Cancer. So it actually creates a T square, but with Jupiter, the greater beneficial planet, up at the top of that T square. And it's ruled by Venus, which we just talked about, just into 2 degrees of Taurus, which is actually square Pluto. So this is going to be a tricky full moon. I mean, they're all kind of tricky, right? The full moons, because they're always, they're an energizer. They energize everybody. We're all running around like the Energizer Bunny. And what happens is we're pushy with our energy, and what that does is it creates opposition in the world from us, usually through other people. Oppositions most of the time play out through relationships, but sometimes they can be just circumstances. But it's just a very difficult time during full moons to find harmony with others and your environment. And many times we find that we're at the height of emotional conflict with others. It's a time where of the month where our moods can be really stormy and they can be really hard to deal with, and we project that out into our relationships. So with the moon in Libra, which is all about relationships, I can guarantee you that that's going to be where a lot of the tension is that comes to the surface. The moon in Libra, if you know, moon is where we're seeking security, and the moon in Libra wants that through peace and harmony. It wants people to get along, and that's why it's the peacemaker. It wants to create balance and harmony in the environment, and that means that people have to be balanced and in harmony with one another. So Libra is really looking for that kind of energy, and can be very, very creative energy too. Really knows how to create like harmonious environments where people can feel really in balance. But Libra is always about the other. She's always going out there trying to gain rapport with other people, and even people that we feel tension or conflict with. We're trying to find some way to get along with them. We're trying to find some way to connect with those people and find balance, because otherwise Libra doesn't feel secure. And this is not a time where the world is feeling very much like that. So it's going to be very triggering for, the energy of trying to find that. And so she's going up against Aries. And the opposition of this full moon is the Aries Libra axis, which is the relationship axis, the relationship to ourselves, Aries, versus the relationship to the other, Libra. And so that's the problem right there, is the sun in Aries, which I talked about a couple weeks ago when it went into Aries. It's all about the self. It's all about looking out for number one. It's very driven by its own interests. And that many times does not take into account, just like the Uranus and Gemini, it doesn't take into account the effects of our actions on other people. We have a tendency to look at emotions when the sun is in Aries as something that is messy and stopping us from where we want to go, something we don't want to really consider. And Libra is like, whoa, consider the emotional impact of this, consider the impact on other people. And that's all nothing that Aries wants to do. So that's where we're having this, where it can really look at Libra can see it as a very selfish energy, and there can be a lot of conflict that comes out with this. And so once again, I mean, to me, really where this is gonna probably show up is in relationships. The tension of this energy is most likely going to show up in relationships with you. And then we also have it coming off another opposition, right, to Saturn. That was the last aspect the full moon made before it became an exact full moon with the sun. So that energy is kind of being carried in to this full moon, that means. And that, once again, it's an opposition. What does that mean? Most likely, it was some kind of relationship that brought in this energy. And the moon opposite Saturn is not easy. It is not an easy relationship. This is one where we feel like someone, really like shut us down emotionally somehow, that we had some kind of crisis with another person or with the situation or some experience in life that really drove us back within and shut us down and brought our emotions really deep inside. And this could have us feeling really lonely, especially with the Libra moon that's driven to try to make some kind of connection with others. But this can have us, like, whatever that situation is, can have us feeling really cool, really reserved, really conservative inside, really even fearful of like emotions possibly, and where they could be leading us, so it can be a very difficult situation where there can be a lot of misunderstandings that came out of that, or even possibly a separation. It could even go that far. And also, that moon Saturn can make us fall into the trap of negative self-thinking, of falling into like not having the confidence in ourselves, allowing others to undermine our confidence, and getting into a bad loop. Now, I will say the Sun in Aries will be helpful with that, because it's so much about like pushing forward and not allowing other people to keep us down. But the next aspect the full moon is going to make is the square to Jupiter, which is very strong in Cancer, exalted there. I've been talking about that, although once again, you know, Cancer and Aries have issues with one another, like Libra and Cancer, not as tough as Aries and Cancer. So like, this is the applying square. So this is where the energy is really going to start to play out. And what I like about this one is it does keep us like in a very positive, enthusiastic mood, like where we will push forward, where we will keep pushing. It'll actually help with the Aries energy. The Jupiter part of it will help with the Aries energy of the sun, because it will just want to keep pushing forward. But it also can fall into that same trap of the Aries energy where, okay, you're being so pushy with this that now you're creating resistance and conflict with it. But my hope with this is that, this will allow, this will be the bridge. Jupiter will be the bridge between the moon and Libra with relationship needs emotionally, versus the sun in Aries with the individual will needing to push forward and not allow relationship to so much take us off course. So, hopefully Jupiter will be this bridge, but we have to be really careful, because like I said, you know, we can be very generous, we can be very kind, but we can also be very, very pushy with this energy. There's a lot of enthusiasm with this. And one of the things that Jupiter does too, that Aries does, is overlook the details of things, not really see the effects we're having on others. So it can be really tricky with that, even though we can stay positive emotionally, we can get really self-righteous, really pushy. And one of the things too about this one, I keep thinking too with this one, is that Jupiter being a social planet, and in Cancer where it can be very nationalistic, and then the Sun in Aries being the authorities and the war energy, that this can keep pushing a lot of the self-righteous attitudes in the world right now on the bigger stage of like, I'm right, you're wrong, my values, my religion, my law, or whatever is what I'm trying to push, and I don't really care how it's affecting other people. So this one, definitely can maybe feed a lot of that energy and things like that, where certain sides are really pushing their values, their philosophy, their religion, and getting really self-righteous about it. And, so really, on a personal level, though, I really think this can help us stay positive. This Jupiter energy, we just once again have to really, it's going to be really tricky to find the balance between the self and the and relationship with this one, because like I said, there's a lot of things pushing on that Aries side that can really, hurt the relationship side of things. Now, the ruler, however, of the new moon is Venus, which just went into Taurus, which, like I said just a little while ago, really does like to take care of its loved ones, really does want to be focused on relationship. But the aspect that Venus next makes is a square to Pluto. In fact, it's exact on Friday. So it's going to affect us all week, really. But, Friday in particular is going to be a very, very intense day for that. And so what that indicates is that, yes, we're probably going to have some really intense emotional experiences during this full moon. And it's really going to show us where certain relationships are at. And it really depends on how we react to that, how this Venus square Pluto will play out, because at least we now know what the reality of the relationship is, right? Like the hidden tensions come to the surface and the full moon will shine a light on them. Then the question is, what are you going to react to that? Like, are you going to accept that, yes, this is where, this relationship is at, this is where people are at, and this is what I have to build with from there, and be real about that? Or is it going to be a thing like, oh, I'm going to try to control and manipulate these people instead? That's what Venus Pluto can do a lot of times, is turn into a power struggle with others in relationships, especially close relationships. This is the energy of like obsessiveness, of manipulation, jealousy, envy, all those kinds of things that, really the Libra moon is like, whoa, help. I don't want to deal with stuff like that. So it can be a really, really tough one, this one. And I really think, what it's telling us is we've got to accept the reality of certain relationships and work with what that is, or maybe we just need to purge that relationship. But if we're going to try to control the others, what this one shows is we're probably going to get in a battle. And with the Aries versus Libra, that could end up being a pretty ugly battle, because one of the things about Libra to remember too is when Libra always thinks that it's fighting for justice. And so, like, if you back Libra into a corner, it will become quite a formidable enemy to you, So you have to be really careful about that, And you look about, like, to me, once again, you look at what's going on with the US and Iran, and that's really a good situation where they're both like entrenched in these positions now, and they're like not, they're both being aggressive. It's hard to see how, you're going to reach any kind of point of peace or agreement with that, which is what the Libra would really like. But once again, it's a full moon. So, expect, the crazy events of people and natural disasters to pick up. Look to where 13 degrees Aries and Libra are in your chart, and whatever two houses they're falling in, that's the two houses in your life that are really going to be under the influence of this full moon, that a light is really going to be shining on them. And if you have any planets in 12, 13, or 14 degrees, they'll be aspecting this full moon too. And also, having a big part in your life on how it comes out. Now, ultimately, what I think this full moon's all about, and it's not an easy one, is like, how do we find balance and peace in relationships and still be able to be the person that we want to be? It is a really tricky thing, because it shows like we're feeling a lot of restriction and anger coming off the Saturn, and we're ready to really burst forward with the Jupiter and Aries parts. So it's like just so hard to find a balance with that. But I really think, this full moon, it's looking for, that peace, that harmony with others, being able to get along with others. And part of us is like, well, wait a minute, I really need to take care of myself first and be true to myself first. It's going to be a very difficult one to find balance with. And I think it will continue to really stir the pot of the world and society and politics and stuff and keep everything really, really edgy on that level. Now, like I said, on Friday, Venus is exactly square Pluto, which I just went through, but we also have Mercury. Its third hit to the trine to Jupiter. Mercury is starting by the end of this week, will be moving faster again and getting to the point where it'll be getting close to the end of its shadow. So Mercury trine Jupiter, like I said, during the retrograde, I tell you guys this is a time to really think about plans like on an abstract level. Now, with the third hit, and especially with Jupiter really strong in Cancer, the sign of its exaltation, it's time to launch some of those plans that you were considering during the Mercury retrograde. It's a time where you really want to work for your future, where you can put a lot of creative intellectual energy into your plans about what you want to do for the future. So obviously, it's really good for business activities. It also gives us an open mind where we allow in information from other sources and we can be very tolerant about it, and this gives us a real far reaching vision. So it's also a great time for any kind of secondary study, especially about law or medicine or philosophy or religion, but anything you've built primary knowledge about and need to get an advanced course in, it's really good for that too. And then Sunday, we have the exact square of the sun to Jupiter, which is similar to the full moon one. It's a very positive energy, a time where we want to push ahead, which works well with the Mercury Jupiter, by the way, too. The thing we have to worry about the most with Sun Jupiter is like promising more than we can actually give, like with our energy, with our resources, with our time, with our money. But what is really good about it is we will attempt to do things we normally would not do in our normal state of consciousness. This like really it gives us a lot of enthusiastic energy where we're willing to take a chance, willing to take a risk, be optimistic, try to break through some barrier that's been holding us back. And we can be very generous with this energy once again, even to the point of being wasteful or extravagant once again, too. And that can really fit in with the Venus and Taurus. So, be careful about your attitude, being a little self righteous once again. But, try to find some place where you can cooperate and try to please some of that Libra full moon so that when you walk out of a conversation, everybody feels good, not just you. Don't be like an energy vampire, basically, because Sun Jupiter, you can be an energy vampire without even realizing it with this very, even where you're feeling positive, but you're being too dominant in places and you're stealing energy from other people. So try to find that place of balance. It's not like you have to give up your values, but try to maintain, an open ear and a tolerant ear, which the Mercury Jupiter can help us with. So that's what I got for this week. I think, we've got some good stuff with the Venus going into Taurus and the Mercury trine Jupiter and even the Jupiter here, but we're going to have it's not going to be an easy time finding the balance between the self and other. And we'll see that probably play out in the world too, on these bigger world events where there's conflicts. It's not going to be easy for them to find some kind of agreements. And that can be between other countries or within countries or whatever. All right, so that's what I got for this week. Next week, what do we got going on next week? Mars is going to go into Aries, the sign of its rulership, and then conjunct Neptune. So that, once again, 2 months of Mars in Aries means we're going to see probably a lot of continued aggression from individuals and from groups and the world. But I'll be talking about that in a lot more detail next week. So what I need you to do right now is pass the link along to somebody else. Even if you've done that before, I just gave you a free service. That is the way I'd like you to pay it forward. If you want to give a monetary or currency donation, no amount is too small. My Venmo is at the symbol at Matthew with two T's, hyphen in the middle, Lawton, Lauten. Cash App is just $ Matthew Lawton, all one word, two T's, Lauten. No amount is too small, you guys. So, like, even if you got $5 you want to throw in, it's been helpful for you. But please pass the link along. Um, Also, I am a professional astrologer. I would love to do your chart if you haven't had it ever done professionally. If you've tried to do it yourself, done a computer readout, or have a friend who dabbles, it's not going to be the same experience as getting it from a professional. You have your chart your whole life. If you're watching this vlog and you haven't had your chart done, you should, because it's going to be with you, and if you want to control the energy in your life better, if you want to have more self-fulfillment, you really should know your chart. And then every year around your birthday, you should get a predictive reading. Just like I do this for the week for the world, do that just for you for the year. And I do relationship charts, children's charts, fixed star readings for deeper soul purpose, relocation type stuff, elections for timing. And right now, as far as classes, I am looking for another student or as many other students who are beginners who want to join. I'm going to be starting a class probably within the next few weeks. It's probably only going to be $25 per class, but yes, I'm going to require prepayment of the classes ahead of time because I want people to be committed to it because I am, and I deserve that respect, right? So I've got, I think, 3 students at least. We're going to be starting this up. So if you want to jump on the wagon, check the website out, or my direct email is matthtue823@gmail.com. Also, if you have a group that's looking for a lecture or workshop, mini readings, can even be done on Zoom. I'm available for that on all kinds of subject matter in astrology. I mean, we can even have an open question and answer session if you'd like to do something like that. So that's what I got for this week, you guys. I know it's going to be a little bit of a tricky week again with this full moon. We're going to probably really be tested with relationships, but hang in there. And next week we'll talk about that Mars and Aries, and we'll see how this, very changing world, changing times continues to unfold. Until then, signing off, and you all take care.